Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This is Julianne Grant from Razorleaf. Happy to be here with you today for our Unpacking 3D Experience webinar series. Today's webinar is going to be about applying the digital design process through ideation and market definition using 3D Experience. Kip Speck is our presenter today. I'm really happy to have him with us. He's one of our resident experts on 3D Experience. He's going to be showing you the product as we work through this process. He's outlined to look at and design a GoPro mount. A couple of housekeeping notes. If you have questions, please put them in the questions panel. We are recording this. We will send this out to our registered attendees shortly after this webinar. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kip.
Thank you very much, Jillian. So, like she said, we will be going through a few stages during the process of the design of the GoPro mount. Today, we're going to focus on the ideation and the market definition. So when we talk about that, what does that mean through collaboration, resources, topics using the 3D Experience platform? So we'll talk about the ideation, the market definition, demonstrate the functionality critical delivering a product. So I'm going to tell you a little story about why skiing and why I like the GoPro mount. Well, and when I went skiing, this really isn't me, it's really Sean White. And this isn't me either, but this is typical of what I do. I usually crash. And if I have my GoPro on, I usually break the GoPro mount, right? So one of the things I thought about was how do I make a better GoPro mount? So I had an idea and I said, let's make a better GoPro mount. So I said it out loud, but I really didn't have anybody to listen to me. So I started building a team. So my team started asking me, what should we use? Should we use ClickUp? Should we use Slack? Should we use Teams? Should we use Google, Chanty, 3D Swim? Well, so I hired a representative for me, and his name was Takanuva. He is experienced as a chronicler. So, and I listened to him. I said, what should we use throughout this process? And he said, well, I think you should use the Systems 3D Experience to bring your GoPro to market. And I told the team, and I said, the team rejoiced, and they said, all right, one platform to do everything, right? So as I started looking at that, what I needed to do was build my team. And in building a team, I needed to have an understanding of what my team can do. People I have in my business or people I don't have, or skill sets and things like that. So I started looking at the members of my team, and then what were their profiles? How do I use the profiles to determine who do I include in this team? So I started looking at that and look at their skills, what languages, what interests, things like that. One of the other options that I wanted to think about for long term, and as some companies do, is I might have some IP security. Maybe it's a GoPro mount that's going to be used in a defense category, right? And there's got to be some IP security. Well, we'll talk about IP security in a later demonstration or a later webinar. But just to kind of touch on it a little bit today, one of the things I wanted to make sure of is that I was able to set up IP security controlled locations. And for right now, we won't be concerned about it. But for the platform, I was able to set it up initially so that when people logged in, they would select their location, just so I could start the process. So what does that look like in the platform? So let's take a look what it looks like in 3D Experience, and we'll go from there. So in 3D Experience, one of the things I wanted to make sure of, like I said, is I built a team. Well, what if I just searched on people because I wanted to find information about them? So I can open up my 3D Experience dashboard, and I've built a dashboard for everybody to use for this project. And I've included them all into this dashboard. I've created different tabs of information and created a structure and shared it out throughout the team. So now when I go to start looking for team members, I can come up to the search bar, and I can search for people, right? And one of the nice things about it was I could filter on people. So I'll come down and filter on people. And as long as my people have filled out skills and things like that, then I can say, well, I want to find an engineer, right? So I can select that one and bring them into my collab, that I can look at the skills and things like that and realize who I want to put in. So I built up the team, and I've added them all to my community that I created under members. So let's take a look at a couple of them just for information. So it gives me an overview about the person and the about. So the person has filled out their skills. They're a mechanical designer, and they're fairly proficient in it, and they also are proficient in SolidWorks, and their interest in vintage cars. One of the other ones I've added to the team, I can see a lot of the posts and things like that in the communities that they've been part of, and that they've collaborated on, which is important to me because it shows me their interest and their ability to communicate in a community like that. So I look at the about there as well, and she's an engineer, also a project manager, speaks Spanish, and look at that, she likes skiing. So that adds a level of experience to my team that I'm building. So I wanted to be able to build a set of team members that are going to be focused around a GoPro mount. You know, my stories around skiing, but it could be any type of GoPro mount. So that's my people, my community. So after I built the community or added the team members, I'm going to go back to my presentation. Then I wanted to start building my community with information, ideas, and things like that. So we'll look at the community based on used to develop the idea that to take it to design. One of the things is I asked my marketing person to go do some market research, look at the competitors, what is out there. So we were able to get the information and bring it in for competitor research. I wanted to know the different type of materials, because obviously the material is what's failing in my current GoPro. So what are other companies making their GoPro mounts out of? What's some of the material research? So we're able to bring that in as well. And then we used ideas in the community to say, is this a good idea? Do we like this or that? And things like that. So be able to create ideas and be able to vote on those ideas and move those ideas from different statuses, from idea, concept, to project plan. We're also able to add media. And this media may be just a conceptual design, or it might be a picture of somebody else's, things like that. It can be any kind of media, videos, pictures, images, things like that. And then we are also able to message. Remember, one of the things that my team wanted to be able to do is to be able to use a platform to be able to do all the things, instead of having scattered platforms through Slack and Teams and all this other stuff. I wanted to be able to link it all together into under one platform. And then I could look at the timeline over the period of the design as well. So it gives me a very good breakdown of the chronological order of things that have happened inside of my community. And then the other really nice important thing about this is once we got an idea to a certain stage, we said, let's use that and make that a requirement. So maybe it was a material, and the material that we chose got to, this is great, we like this, and project plan it. And then we said, transfer this idea to a requirement. Now that requirement gets created, and it goes to the engineering category in its actual requirement. And then I can apply that to the model definitions. So let's take a look at the community itself. So again, one of the things I mentioned a minute ago was the control your location. So since I'm located in the United States, I can click United States, remember my location for a week, and I can click submit. And I can have all my users do this as well. But it gives you the ability for being able to select the location in. Maybe I'm traveling this week and there's IP security and I need to set my location to India. And once I do that, things that are secured under IP security, if I don't have access because I'm in a different location, will get filtered out. So being able to set my location is important to the process. So then additionally, I have tasks that were assigned. So these tasks were created so that we knew that we needed to do ideation, market competitors, material research, and things like that as well. So went through these different tasks, we gave it a title, it gives me a % complete, start, end dates, things like that, any attachments or deliverables. If I look at the market research, there's a project associated to this, as well as there are some deliverables, right? So one of the deliverables was a requirement. So we'll take a look at that as well. So under the Community Hub tab that I created and I've invited everybody into, I see my communities over here that I belong to, and this is the GoPro Mount. So under here, I see materials for the 3D swim, I see comments that have been on there, and I see whether or not somebody's voted on it, up or down, and the status of that idea. You'll see on this one is market research. And when I click on market research, I get a list of all the different types of video cameras out there that are some information about what's their different aspects of them that make them good or bad, things like that. So the other parts of it is in my market research, it has links. So I can actually click on the link and it will take me to those websites for actual information. So it's not just dumb text. So it actually understands the information. And I put a question out there as a survey. It says, should we go develop this any further? 3 people you can see said, yes, let's do it. And here was a competitor mount that we looked at. And when we look at it, you know, they sell it on Amazon. One of the important things was, what's the price point? You know, if I design something and it's $50 and my competitors have a just as good or a product out there or almost as good, then and they are only selling it for a third of the cost, then I'm missing my market. So it's important to be able to do market research in what's available out there, right? So and be able to capture that information. Down here, I looked at some materials, different areas, or what types of materials other competitors were using, right, and what they were presenting. So these were all very important things to the ideation of my GoPro mount. So I wanted people's input from different areas and different types of people. If I just try to do it in a vacuum by myself, I'm not using the resources that I have. So by adding other members to my ideation process about what the GoPro mount should be, I bring in more intelligent people or more resources to be able to add more rich information to it. And again, this was an image of a prototype or a conceptual design of the GoPro mount. Okay. In here, I can also take and say, let's filter on the ideas. So when I filter on ideas, if I look at the funnels, I can say, show me all the ideas that are a new idea, or show me ones that are in concept phase, show me ones that are in project plan. The materials for swim, so if I look at this one, now again, when I look at this, one of the things I was talking about in the slide was, now that we believe this is a good idea and it's in project plan, maturity state, and you can change the names of these states, you can make them whatever you want. And you can add more if you'd like to, right? And you can set a minimum of, say, well, to get to an idea or to get it to a requirement, it has to be in a certain state, right? So you can set that up in the community. But I'm going to say transfer this to idea. So transfer this to a requirement. And when I do, it comes up and it says, gives me the type and then what collaborative space it's going to be in. I'm just to say transfer my idea. And it says my requirement has been created. Okay. So this is materials from swim. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my community and understand I can see a lot of the community details and then the timeline. Now, again, it shows me a history of everything that's gone on from start to finish, and you can kind of reorganize this as you want to as well. I can look at the media. If I filter on media, I can see all the different types of media, all the images and things like that that have been added to the community, things like that. Any questions, any wiki, I can create a wiki page. Maybe I want to define requirements or say, here's are some standards that we're trying to go by, right? So you can create a wiki page yourself as well. Okay. So we looked at the requirements. We've created a requirement from the idea, and what we want to look at is the requirement specification, how it's broken down into chapters, requirements, and comments. Now, again, we haven't designed anything. We haven't done any 3D modeling or anything. We are in a requirements definition phase or ideation phase of what is this going to take, right? Before we go into doing any type of 3D modeling and stuff, right? So we'll take a look at that as well. So when I look at go back to my dashboard, I have requirements. And if I go ahead and refresh my screen, I'll go home. There's my requirement that I created for my idea. So that new requirement, I can add into an existing requirement specification, drag and drop it in, things like that. So now that I've created that requirement from the idea, I can now utilize that requirement in my requirement structure. So I have different types of requirements, and down here I have materials. Maybe have a polycarbonate or stainless steel, things like that as well. So I'm going to pause for a second. I think we've got plenty, a little extra time here. So I'm going to pause for just a second and kind of review a little bit. So we've looked at the requirements and how that applies to the ideation funnel or to the ideas and things like that. So what's important is to be able to create the idea, be able to mature that idea into a requirement or specifications, and then how does that adapt to the product definition itself. And how to wrap that into a governance using a project, right? So creating a project allows me to set milestones or phases. Maybe I need to get investors, or maybe I need to do certain prototyping, things like that. Maybe I need to look at the different types of materials that are available in the market. So those are all things that I can create project plans around. And in our next webinars, we'll dive deeper into project structure requirements and model definition. But for early on, I can start building these things, right? So if we take a look at the project inside of the 3D experience that I've created for this, you'll see that in here for the GoPro Mount, I've created different project overview. I have tasks that are pending. And if I look at the business status, you'll notice that there's a risk cube here as well. And in the risk cube, I can see what's at risk. Well, the availability is a risk, right? So sources, right? So if I look at that risk, what it's telling me, sources are in volatile areas, right? So there's different things that you can do with the platform in project management. In IP and export control, I can add specific classes to this to make sure that I have the right people and right skill sets inside of here as well. So with the schedule, one of the things I wanted to look at was the material research. And during the material research task that they did, they actually added a deliverable, and that deliverable was this requirement. So once we created the requirement, they added it to the task and said, I delivered my requirement, delivered my task for this, and it's a requirement. Okay? So from the project plan, I can see all that. And again, in our next webinar, we'll dive deeper into project plans and how to use them. And especially when we look at people, how do I create a resource plan and things like that? So when I developed the project plan and I used the people from my community, one of the things I wanted to be able to do is create a resource plan and submit that and have the manager say, here's the people that I will give to you for this project. And I was able to put in the estimated number of hours and things like that. So we'll go more into detail about those kind of things in our next webinar as we get more into the planning side of it. So we touched on the requirements and what the structure looks like, and we'll go back and look at it real quick one more time. So on the requirements definition, when we look at this, and it's widget based, and I can also open this into the web-based one as well. So if I use my compass, I can go to my requirements management. I can search for the app, and I can go to the requirements management tool. So under my requirements management, I can see all the different ones that I have here as well. So I'm going to go home. Sorry about that. It took me back to a previous spot that I was in when I was working on this. So here's my requirement structure. So my specification. And when I look at that, things that I did, and again, I'm doing this all during the ideation phase based on the things that I know, right? So what type of mounts do I think we can use, right? What are the different things inside of there? So under the specification, I can say fasteners, materials, right? So underneath here, I can build a set of requirements, and I can manually do these, right? So I can add in a new requirement underneath here. I can give it definition. I can change the material or the comments inside of here as well. And the other part is once I've created this specification, I can export this right to Word. I'm going to say whole structure. I'm going to say done. So once it's done, I can open the file. And now I have a requirement structure that was created. And with the requirements capture integration in Office, I can actually update this and save it back to the requirements and things like that. So this gives me a way to export or create a requirement structure. Maybe I need to send requirements to different vendors. Maybe I have a supplier that needs to know about the materials and things like that they're going to provide for me. And maybe I only want to export that part of that requirement to them. So when I say export, I could say whole structure or displayed items. So I can selectively select what I'm going to export and send to suppliers or OEMs or different manufacturers as well. Okay. I've gone a little bit. I'm going to stop here and start. And on our next webinar, we're going to look at using product definition and planning for the GoPro Mount, requirements of product definition, and we'll go into how to create those a little bit more and more of the planning side of it, of how to do planning, how the requirements are linked to the project plan. So when you create a project, you can actually link the requirements or the model definition tasks and things like that to the models and how those all work together. Okay. So that's in our next one that'll be coming up on the 27th. And I'll pause here for some questions.
Great, thanks, Kip. And thank you everyone for joining here today. I heard that there may have been some lagging issues in the videos, so we'll be going through that before we send out the recording to make sure everything comes through clearly. Some people did have problems, some people didn't. So my apologies if you ran into some of those issues. All right, so for some questions, please enter your questions in the questions panel if you have any. And I do have one here, Kip. So you showed some of the, you can add people to your team. So questions on that. Can you invite people outside of the platform or not that don't have a license on the platform to participate in a team? Or is there a way to just view information? Or does everyone need a license?
So on public cloud, on the Dassault public cloud, you can. If you're hosting premise, then you need to be able to have a license for them. But the Dassault public cloud, you can.
Okay, great. And then you were sharing how people, how you can provide input in the materials and the research. Can everyone on the team also provide that input, or are there levels of permissions that need to be set for that?
As long as, so this is the great thing about a community, right? It's open to everybody that has access an IFW license or access to that community. They can contribute to it. So they can add comments and they can add documents and things like that, or images, as long as they have access to that community.
Okay, great. It's good news. One more question. So you touched on briefly on a wiki page. Is that a template provided in the platform, or is that something you have to create?
You create it yourself. I don't think there's any templates. I can certainly follow up on that, but the wiki page, you can, it can be of any type of topics you want. It might be a materials wiki, it may be a wiki about processes or something else. So your wikis can be anything that you want them to be. They're very easy to create. It's very structured, very easy to create your own in the community.
All right, great, awesome. Any other questions? Please enter them in the questions panel. I'll be happy to take them. Just give it another minute, Kip. All right, well, I'm not seeing anything come through. We do have Kip's email on here. If anyone has any follow-up questions they'd like to talk with Kip specifically about, please, we invite you to communicate with Kip directly. We give thank you for your time today. I will be processing the recording this afternoon and hopefully get a link up to you by the end of the week. And make sure to sign up for our September webinar on the part 2, wherein we get through the definition, the product planning part. I think it'll be an interesting process to keep learning. All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kip, for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good afternoon.